Dice, 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 EA, dice, EA. Why? How many times must we do this? I thought they may have learned from, pretty much every Battlefield release before this, and all of EA's experience of screwing up every extremely hyped game they've ever had. In a lot of ways, it is very ironic that 2020's most hyped game ended up launching buggy with bad performance, and the same thing has happened in 2021. If you've been watching me for a while now, you'd probably know how excited I was for this game. I even replayed a lot of the previous Battlefields in anticipation of 2042. I would like to make something clear here though. While yes, Battlefield 2042 is pretty buggy and poorly optimized at the moment, that doesn't mean I still didn't have fun. I still had a lot of fun on this game, especially with friends, and I do genuinely think there's a pretty decent game buried beneath all the issues that will hopefully be ironed out in a few months with updates. People are definitely justified with being mad at the current game's state, because when you're paying $60 or even more if you went with the gold or ultimate edition to play it early, then you should be getting an actual finished and polished version of the game. It's pretty hilarious how much hate Battlefield 5 was getting when it came out, and now that game is looking pretty good right about now to a lot of people. But let's start by talking about probably the most pressing issue with Battlefield 2042 right now, the optimization / performance. This should definitely be number one on DICE's list of priority. A lot of people aren't even really able to play the game because the frame rates are so bad. I'm gonna leave my PC specs on screen now. Now I do realize I don't have the best PC, but it's still pretty decent, and you shouldn't need an RTX 3090 or something crazy like that just to run this game at playable frame rates. Now I played at 1440p on all low settings, and in Conquest and Breakthrough I averaged around 95 to 105 FPS, which obviously isn't bad, but considering I'm playing on all low settings, that's kind of ridiculous. And if you want to use that as kind of a reference to your own PC specs to guess what your game would run 2042 at. Now performance was definitely better in Hazard Zone and Portal. In the Hazard Zone I was averaging around 110 to even 130 FPS in some points of the maps, while in Portal I was getting around 100 to 110 FPS. I think this makes it quite apparent that the player count has quite a big influence on the frame rate, as Conquest and Breakthrough are 64 versus 64, while Hazard Zone is only 32 players total, and Portal for the old Battlefield games are the classic 32 versus 32. Now from first glance you would think surely 64 versus 64, 128 players sounds more fun and more chaotic than 32 versus 32, but when you look at the trade-off, that's not really the case. The performance obviously takes a huge hit from the bigger maps and increased player count, so that alone is a really bad trade-off. I also noticed that since the maps are significantly larger than most Battlefield maps to account for the doubling of the players, the games can feel a lot slower paced than they normally would. Being on the ground, you have to run these long distances just to get from objective to objective, unless you have a vehicle of course, but that in turn leads to lower kill games and a lot less action that you would normally have on 32 versus 32 with smaller maps. And keep in mind, it's not like 32 versus 32 is small by any means, that's still pretty massive. While 128 players sounds awesome and looks good on the box, I'm not sure if those trade-offs are actually worth it. 2042 also made a lot of questionable changes to Conquest. I noticed this game definitely felt a lot more arcadey than previous Battlefield games. The specialists don't really fit with Battlefield. The automated drones and turrets, deployable shields, and scanning people through walls, they just don't feel like things that belong in Battlefield. I realize the whole specialist system is very controversial, and EA probably isn't going to revert back to the classic class system since the specialists are so baked into the game, but I'm hoping they can at least change a few things. Like at least make some gadgets and weapons specific to some specialists, so not any specialist can use any gadget or weapon, because sure, while it does give you more freedom and versatility, it removes the need for any kind of team play or coordination when choosing your specialist, which always used to be a pretty big part of Battlefield, and making sure your squad had the best support and classes. One thing I will say though is I loved the wingsuit in this game. I had so much fun with that thing. There's also quite a few balancing issues. The vehicles are very strong, stronger than usual. The hovercraft specifically is very overpowered and needs a nerf soon. It's armored so bullets can't damage it, and it's very hard to shoot people out of the hovercraft, and it's got this laser beam of a minigun on top that can just destroy people. Helos also feel very strong, although at least with those, it takes quite a bit of skill to use them properly. There's also a few other odd changes. For one, there's no server browser on PC, which is pretty dumb. That's been a thing for a while, and the ability to choose what maps and servers you want to play on, I think, is pretty important, so hopefully that gets added in at some point in the future. But then again, DICE and EA had to be well aware that they were purposely not putting the server browser in the game. The long cutscene of the map and being brought into the map at the start of each game needs to go. It's too long, it doesn't actually show anything cool, and it gets annoying after seeing it before every game for the 100th time. The game also forces you to spawn in a specific spot at the start of each game, which is really stupid, because if you're not in a vehicle, you just have to run hundreds of meters to the nearest objective. I don't see why you can't just choose to wait and spawn in later on an objective or vehicle like you can in literally every Battlefield game. You also can't manually switch squads in this game. Again, something that has been in Battlefield for as long as I can remember, so that should be included as well. Breakthrough is definitely a more action-packed, fast-paced mode since there's only 2 objectives, and all the players are funneling in from one area, so you're definitely likely to have more kills in Breakthrough than in Conquest. Some of the maps do feel pretty defender or attacker sided, but that's to be expected, I think. I also almost forgot to mention the really cool weather effects in the game with the sandstorms and tornadoes. Oh, that's not good. Oh no. Oh no, 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 no. Whee! Oh my. The gunplay in this game is also in a very rough state. The bullet spread and bloom feels really bad on most weapons, to the point where anything other than close range feels wild and unpredictable with all the weapons, except for the PP-29, which is by far the best weapon in the game, I think. It's not even necessarily because it's the strongest and has the best stats, but it's because it's the only gun that doesn't have that awful bullet spread and bloom. Bullets actually go where you aim them most of the time, and the gun feels great. This gun low-key saved my experience, as I was starting to get really frustrated with a lot of the weapons in the game. I also think it's worth pointing out that at the moment, the amount of weapons is pretty lacking. We usually have quite a bit more than this. However, that's still nowhere near as bad as this game's broken hit registration. I had so many bullets just vanish once they hit somebody or go right through them. There were times where I hit a clear headshot that registered as a body shot. The hit registration is a complete mess right now and definitely needs to be up there on DICE's priority list. The attachment system and being able to switch attachments in-game is pretty cool. Not that I really found myself using it that much. However, the customization system feels really clunky and unintuitive. That could definitely do with some changes as well. Hazard Zone is the new mode that feels like a mix between Escape from Tarkov and a battle royale. I think Hazard Zone is a cool idea and it has a lot of potential, but it definitely needs some changes as well. I think the specialists work much better in this mode. In fact, I feel like this is what they were specifically designed for, and since you can only have one of each specialist in your squad, it forces you to be more strategic and choose what will best support your squad. However, this mode has a lot of AIs in it, like way too many in my opinion, and honestly, I'm not even sure if they're necessary in this mode. They aren't satisfying to kill, and most of the time they're just annoying obstacles that disrupt the flow of the mode. They're usually just sitting around the data drives, and there's a huge swarm of them that just spawn in at the extraction point. And I think if it was just players versus players, it would be a lot more enjoyable, or at least lower the amount of bots. Hazard Zone is fun though, and you can tell it's kind of meant to be Battlefield's version of Warzone, if you would. However, you can't get this mode separately from 2042, like the free-to-play battle royales out there. And most Battlefield players probably don't really like this kind of mode, so unless this becomes a free-to-play, it may be hard for this mode to retain players over the long term. I also think the current credit system doesn't really offer enough incentive or reward to make me want to play this mode consistently. All the credits do is allow you to buy weapons and gadgets for your next Hazard Zone game. If you don't like Hazard Zone, then you have no reason for wanting to or even needing to play it. It does also use all the Conquest maps, which I suppose worked pretty well, although it would be nice to see some new Hazard Zone specific maps that were actually built for the game mode. Charlie sector has fallen to the enemy. Portal is Battlefield 2042's saving grace. It feels like it was actually made for Battlefield fans without any hidden agendas or ways to exploit players. You can tell this mode was made by people who genuinely care about the Battlefield fan base. And a big reason Portal is such a great mode is because you can remove and change all the dumb stuff they did in 2042. The community servers are really fun, and you can already see all the cool stuff people are doing with Portal. And it just makes me really excited for the future of this mode if it's already got this much to offer. It of course has multiple maps from Battlefield 3, Bad Company 2, and 1942, and I'd expect them to add even more maps from these games and possibly get some Battlefield 4 and 2142 in there as well, which would be awesome. The limits and potential for Portal are pretty much endless, and this is by far one of the best ideas DICE has had in a while. It's very easy and accessible to create your own server and experience. You can customize things like characters, weapons, attachments, vehicles, AI, gadgets, and the user interface. You can change damage outputs, remove sprinting, make it melee only, ban and restrict certain weapons and vehicles. You can do game versus game, like Battlefield 2042 specialists and weapons versus the Battlefield 3 class system and weapons. There's just so much you can do with it. The one unfortunate thing about Portal right now is you can't get XP on the community servers, or at least there's a very small cap on it, since people were doing XP farms, which is too bad because if there was, I would be playing that 24/7. I hope they add it back and make some kind of system, like make it so you don't get XP from killing bots or something like that, because also being able to level up and improve your weapons while playing community servers is pretty awesome. Portal also has a few game modes that are missing in All-Out Warfare, like Team Deathmatch and Free-For-All. By far, my favorite experiences on Portal so far have been playing 2042 on Hardcore or playing Battlefield 3 Conquest. Portal already has a lot going for it, and I'm very excited for the potential with it. This mode could last for years and years to come. At some point, they may even make Portal purchasable separately from the main game, which would be very nice for a lot of people who don't want to play 2042. Now, I wanted to save this last part to talk about a lot of the bugs within the game. I did encounter quite a lot of bugs, most of them game breaking. There's this one really bad one where you get into the spawn screen, except the entire lobby is glitched and nobody can deploy. I got this twice in a row, funny enough, and didn't get it at all after that. So while I'd like to say it's rare, it definitely still happens to a lot of people. There's also a bug where the game just decides to break. There were times where I couldn't switch weapons, aim down sights, crouch, and there's even a bug where you get downed and the respawn timer just says 0 and you can't redeploy, so you're just forced to leave the game. And like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of bugs with the gunplay and hit registration, and while I would like to think a lot of these bugs will be fixed in a couple months, with all the issues that need fixing, I find that quite unlikely. Battlefield 2042 is in a very rough state at the moment. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I still had tons of fun with it, especially with friends, but there's so many pressing issues that you are definitely better off waiting several months when everything starts to get fixed and all the updates start rolling in. I obviously can't say how long that will be. I would hope most of the issues will be fixed by at the most 6 months from now, but I can't really say. It really is too bad as well because there is a good game at the core here. I'm sure it'll be fully realized in a few months, but it sucks that EA is about as good at learning their lesson as Ubisoft is at listening to their fans. Anyway, that does it for my review on Battlefield 2042. Let me know what you guys think of the game in the comments if you've played it already, although I can probably guess. If you're new here or haven't seen my reviews for Battlefield 5, 1, 4, and Hardline, I'll leave links for those in the description if you want to check them out. Also, consider dropping a like and subscribing if you're new here, and other than that, thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day, everybody.